They say the moon remembers what we try to forget. It remembers the way his breath broke when he kissed me against the rain-slick brick. It remembers the heat of a stranger's hands at my waist, the sound of my own name swallowed by thunder, the way I swore I would never see him again. And yet, when the moon climbs tonight, silver, cold, hungry, it brings him back to me. I should start with the truth. I didn't mean to want him. I meant to drink too much, to drown the ache of a year spent trying to be small in a city that only ever takes. I meant to be no one under strobe lights and violet fog. Then he stepped out of the dark, like a secret the night was tired of keeping, and the room moved around him the way water parts for ships. Leather, shadow, storm gray eyes. Dangerous, beautiful. The kind of man your mother calls a curse and your bones call a home. I touched him first. If fate keeps a ledger, it wrote that in ink. We were clumsy and perfect in the alley while the club's neon throbbed like a second pulse. I didn't ask his name. He didn't ask mine. The rain washed us clean and didn't. I thought I could leave it on that brick wall, a sin pressed flat beneath city heat. Then, at dawn, the moon stopped pretending to be weak. The first sign was scent. Not perfume, not smoke, pine, cold iron, wild. It clung to my skin after I showered and would not leave. The second was the bruise blooming at the base of my throat, shaped not like fingers, but like a crescent. Not a bite. Not quite. Something older. The third sign was the wolf I saw in a reflection that wasn't mine. I caught him in the window of the train. Impossible. Unblinking. Standing behind me where no one stood. A trick of light, I told myself. Sleep deprivation. Shame. I laughed until I wanted to cry, and then days later, when the moon turned full, and fat and too close, the fourth sign came. The sound of my name carried on a voice I had only heard raw and breathless. Wren. I dropped the mug. Coffee bled across tile. The voice was already in the hall. There are doors you lock because you are prudent, and there are doors you lock because you have learned. I'd locked all three. The chain slid back. The deadbolt turned. The knob turned last, slow, reverent, like a hand on a prayer bell. He filled the doorway. The alley had not lied. If anything, it had been modest. He was taller in my kitchen's thin light, broader, carved out of the night he carried with him. His eyes found the place where my pulse leapt and held it there as if he could pin a heartbeat like a moth. I shouldn't have come, he said. His voice was the low place between thunder and rain. But I am done lying to the moon. My mouth was dry. You broke my lock, I asked politely first. A flicker of mouth, almost a smile. It died when he inhaled. The room changed. You're wearing me. Heat crawled up my neck. Get out. I can't. His hand lifted and stopped midair, as if touching me might set something irrevocable alight. I tried. For nights? For miles. He stepped inside. The room gave him space the way water makes room for a stone. I had the absurd urge to grab a wooden spoon like a sword. He looked from my shaking hands to the crescent at my throat and went very still. Mine, he said softly, like a verdict, like wonder, not a question. A recognition. Every smart thing in me stood up and began to leave. You don't get to say that. His gaze didn't move from the mark he'd made without knowing. I'm not saying it. I'm hearing it. He touched his sternum, not his throat. Here. I hated the way my body leaned toward him, the way my blood turned traitor at the sound of that word. Tell me your name, Kael. He tasted it like he was reminding himself he had one. Kael Ashbourne. His eyes flicked to the window. And you, Wren, are not safe. I laughed then, short and ugly. From you? From them. He didn't turn his back to the door even now. He moved like someone who had been hunted too long to believe an accident. From what hunts anything I claim? The word caught me again, hooks and honey. I swallowed hard. We had one night. That doesn't make me yours. He closed the distance he'd been careful to keep, not quite touching me, close enough that his scent, forest after lightning, bent the room. I felt the shape of his heat along the length of me, and hated the way it steadied me. Some bonds are written under roofs, he said, some under sky. The goddess prefers one. His mouth tilted, not kind. So do wolves. I'm not a wolf. He studied me, and in that look I understood why kings once had testers for poison. You're not nothing either. Try again with a compliment. Compliments are for girls who want to be lied to, he said. You wore a stranger in the rain and didn't look away from the part of yourself that wanted it. That's not innocence. That's honesty. Wolves make vows to women like that. Something hungry and reckless in me stepped out of its cage and pressed against the glass. You make vows to strangers often? I don't make vows, he said, and something in the words made the kitchen colder. I keep them. We stood like that too long for sanity. Then the world knocked. Not hands, not wood. The air itself hit the walls wrong. A pressure change that made the glass hum. Kael's head snapped to the door. Mine did too, though I didn't know why. Pack? I whispered. Not mine. His jaw locked. Order. If fear had a taste, it would be clean and metallic, like coins you bite to test if they're real. I tasted it then. Kael moved before I could breathe, taking my wrist, not rough, not gentle, and drawing me back from the windows. His palm on my skin was heat and command and apology layered thin. Closet, he said. Now. I'm not hiding in my Wren. He said my name like a hand closing around a knife. Do you trust me? No. Good. He opened the closet anyway, pressed something small and cold into my fingers. A key? No, iron old, a charm? Close your eyes and think of rain in the alley. Don't think of me. Don't think of your name. Don't think of anything at all. You're very bad at comfort. I'm very good at keeping people breathing. His breath brushed my cheek. Almost a touch. Not one. Do what I say. The second knock wasn't a knock. It was a sound that makes wolves lift their heads and men make the sign of old gods they say they've forgotten. The deadbolt turned by itself. Kael put his body between me and the door and became a wall. The thing that came in wore a man like a suit and wore him badly. Too smooth at the joints. Too amused by the way his mouth could move. Behind him 2 more. Men this time, but wrong in the eyes. Hunters appointed by something that didn't bless. Alpha, the knot man said. How generous of you to fetch our stray. Kael didn't bother lying. You followed me. We followed the claim. Its smile seemed borrowed. She wore you home. That makes her ours by the oldest rules. Only if I bend my neck, Kael said. And for a heartbeat, the kitchen wasn't a kitchen. It was a clearing that remembered blood. I don't kneel. Everyone kneels, the thing crooned. Eventually. Kael moved, faster than a man, faster than a threat, and the man-suit hit my table hard enough to turn pine into splinters. The 2 behind him lunged. The room became knives and breath, and the terrible soft sound of something that shouldn't bleed learning how. I pressed my back against coats that smelled like my mother's winters and made myself smaller than fear. Out, Kael snarled, and the knot man laughed through a mouthful of its own ruin. She'll burn for you, you know, it whispered, voice spilling under the fight and into my ear like smoke through a keyhole. That's how it ends. Little human candles, big wolf funerals. Something in me, the small part that had wanted to be nothing, stood up and broke. I stepped out of the closet with the iron charm in my fist and did the unthinkable. I spoke to a thing that answers to older names in a voice that didn't shake. She's not a candle, I said. She's a storm. Kael's eyes cut to me, warning, shock, something like pride, just as the thing lunged. I drove the iron into the soft place under its jaw, the way you put a key where it belongs and turn. It screamed like metal screaming, a sound that isn't meant for kitchens. The hunters broke rank. Kael finished what I started with a speed that looked like mercy, and wasn't. Silence rushed in, clumsy. I realized my hands were bleeding. The floor knew my name. The mark at my throat ached like a promise. Kael looked at me and did not look away. He wiped the blood from my knuckles with the side of his thumb, and made a sound I had only heard in the alley. Half prayer, half curse. You shouldn't have done that, he said. I'm tired of being told where to stand. You don't understand what you've told them. Night about yourself? Then translate. He stepped back like. Distance was the only thing between us that might keep the walls up. You stood beside a claim. The order will answer with fire. Let them. I've been cold a long time. His mouth curved. Hurt and hunger and awe in a shape men don't get to keep. He nodded once, like he was laying a blade at someone's feet. "Then hear me. Wren marked in rain," he said. And my bones knew the ceremony even if my head did not. "By fang and breath and moon I vow you under my guard. What hunts you I hunt. What finds you finds my teeth first. Until I fall, or the stars forget how to burn. You can't just—" My throat closed. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." His voice roughened. "And if I'm wrong, the price is mine." Sirens wound up somewhere far away. The room seemed to tilt toward morning. Kael bent, slid a knife through the belt of one hunter, and set flame to my broken table with a match he struck on his own teeth. "The blood would be ash in a minute. Ash is easier to lie about. We have to go," he said. "Now. I have a job. You have a target painted on your throat by a god who ran out of softer colors." He offered his hand. When I didn't take it, he didn't beg. He turned and opened the door he had broken, and the hallway smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. His voice came back to me without his eyes. "One night gave me a map," he said. "I've been lost without it ever since. I should have stayed. I should have called someone and told no truths. Instead, I chose the stupidest thing a woman can choose, something that felt like living." I took his hand. The stairwell swallowed us. The city opened like a throat. Behind us, somewhere deep in the bones of the building, the last of the Order's breath died inside a body and did not go to heaven. The moon went behind a cloud and watched through lace. I didn't ask where we were going. He didn't ask if I could keep up. At the corner, a black SUV idled where parking is a myth. A woman leaned against it like boredom in leather, tall, scar between her brows, the kind of beauty knives understand. She looked me over once and shrugged. "So this is the girl." Her voice was smoke and caffeine. "You always did have a taste for trouble dressed like poetry, Alpha." "Rowan," he warned. She rolled her eyes. "Relax, I like her. She bleeds right." Then to me, "Welcome to the part of the city that isn't on your maps." Kael opened the back door. I slid in. The seat smelled like cedar and gasoline and choices. Before he followed, he looked down the street as if he could see the future come around the corner wearing a suit and a smile. His shoulders squared the way men do when they're about to put themselves between you and everything. "You can still change your mind," he said. "Last chance pulled taut." I heard myself answer like I'd rehearsed it in a life I didn't remember. "Not anymore," Rowan grinned, sharp. "Oh, she's very ruined. I approve." The SUV pulled away. The city blurred. I pressed my fingers to the crescent at my throat and felt it heat under my skin like a coal that means to become a star. I told myself I was not afraid. I told myself I would not love a man who says mine like a vow. I told myself we could outrun whatever remembers us. The moon remembered anyway. By the time we hit the bridge, 3 black motorcycles slid out of a side street and settled around us like wolves falling into formation. Not ours. Helmets that don't reflect faces. Jackets without patches. The mark of men who hunt without packs. Kael's eyes found mine in the rear view. He didn't need to say hold on for my hands to find the leather loop by the window. Rowan smiled like a coin flipping. Finally, the first bike drew level with my door. The rider turned his helmet toward me and lifted 2 fingers in a salute that meant nothing nice. I met my reflection in black glass and for a heartbeat saw not myself but the girl in the rain with a stranger's mouth on her, the girl who opened the door to a wolf and didn't scream. "Wren," Kael said, gentle for the first time since the kitchen. "Do exactly what I say." "What's that?" "Breathe," the bike gunned. The SUV shuddered. The river opened its black mouth beneath us like a promise. I breathed. I did not look away, and when the rider reached into his jacket, I learned what the end of a beginning feels like. The clean click of a gun leaving leather. The soft gasp I didn't mean to make. The way Kael said my name like a prayer that expects an answer. The first shot took the rear window, like glass is a suggestion. Rowan laughed and drove faster. The moon came out from behind its veil and painted everything silver, including the shape of a mark I could not wash away. I didn't know then that some loves are knives you learn to hold by the blade. I only knew the way my body moved toward the man who'd sworn himself to the worst parts of me. And the way, when the second shot came, he reached back without looking, and covered my heart with his hand. The bullet found his palm instead of my chest. The sound it made was small. The future it changed was not. And that is how the moon took what I promised never to give again, my fear, and gave me something I am still learning to survive. His blood on my skin, warm as vows. The moment the glass exploded, the night found its rhythm again. Gunfire, metal, the smell of salt and gasoline. Rowan's hands were steady on the wheel. Kael's were not. One gripped his bleeding palm, the other braced against the seat in front of me. Body turned to block what bullets might still come. "Drive," he said. Rowan laughed, all teeth. Wasn't planning to knit. The SUV jumped lanes. The bikes followed, headlamps slicing through rain. I tasted metal in my mouth, realized it was from biting my tongue when the bullet hit. Kael's blood soaked the seat between us. He didn't flinch. "Keep low," he said to me, voice gone flat. "You're hit. I've been worse. That's not comforting." "Good." Another shot tore the mirror away. Rowan swore and swerved, sending one bike scraping the bridge rail. The rider flipped into the dark river. 2 left, maybe 3. They moved like they could smell us. Kael turned his head, met my eyes, and something old flared in him. "You smell like me. That's how they're tracking. Then tell me how to stop it." He smiled, small and cruel. "You can't." "Then what?" "Stay alive until I think of something better." The next impact wasn't a bullet. It was a body. One rider had leapt, claws out, not steel but bone. The creature slammed into the roof, screaming laughter. Kael shoved me down, drew the knife from his belt with his uninjured hand, and punched it upward through the ceiling. The blade found flesh. The laughter stopped. Rowan took the curve at 80. The corpse rolled into the road behind us. Silence then. "They won't stop, Kael," she said. Order sent a tether pack. Bloodhounds. Kael's jaw flexed. Then we cut the leash. He looked back at me. "Hold your breath." Before I could ask why, he kicked open the rear door and threw himself into the rain. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I was screaming his name, half sob, half fury. Rowan didn't slow. "Where?" I gasped. "Doing something stupid," she said, which is his specialty. Through the window, I saw him hit the pavement, roll, rise. The last bike swung toward him, headlamp a white coin in the dark. He caught it by the handlebars, muscle and momentum, and flipped the rider into the rail. The machine went with him. Sparks lit the river. The bridge glowed for a breath like sunrise, then went black again. Rowan's knuckles were white on the wheel. "He'll find us." He always does. I wanted to believe her. We ditched the SUV at a service tunnel beneath the old industrial park. Rowan guided me through rusted doors, down concrete stairs, into a warren that smelled of oil and rain. She flipped a switch. Yellow light flickered on rows of old machinery, the ghosts of factories that once built ships. "Sit," she said. "I'm not. Sit before you fall." I sat. My legs shook. The world spun. Kael's blood was still on my hands. Rowan knelt in front of me, unwrapping a kit from her jacket. "You're not Pack," she said. "Not yet." "I'm nothing," I said. She looked up, met my eyes. "Wrong. You're the reason half the city's killers took night shifts. Whatever you did, sweetheart, you woke an Alpha's bond. That's not nothing. I didn't ask for it. No one does." She cleaned my hands with a cloth that smelled of whiskey. "He saved you?" "Yes." "Then you'll save him." I shook my head. "He doesn't need saving. Everyone does." She stood. "Even gods in wolf's clothing." Kael came back at dawn. He wasn't dead. He just looked like death hadn't decided yet. His shirt was torn, shoulder half bandaged, eyes bright with fever and something worse. When he saw me, the storm inside him broke and rebuilt itself in a single breath. "You're hurt," I whispered. "So are you," he said. "You smell like fear. I smell like blood. Mine." He crossed the room, dropped to his knees in front of me. The gesture was wrong on him. Too wild, too intimate. His hand found the mark at my throat. His thumb traced it once. The crescent burned beneath his touch. "They won't stop until they have you. Then don't let them. I shouldn't have touched you that night. Too late." He closed his eyes. You think this is desire? It's not. It's doom in disguise. I know, I said, and I still want it. He laughed, broken and beautiful. Then the moon really does hate me. He leaned in, breath warm at my ear. When they come again, we don't run. We end it. By afternoon, the plan had a shape. Rowan called it suicide. Kael called it strategy. They'd hit the order before it hit us. An outpost in the river district, a place where the scent of iron hid what wolves couldn't. Stay here, he told me. No. Wren, you said I'm marked. That means I'm already in it, Rowan snorted. She's got more backbone than you did at her age. I was never her age, he said. We went anyway. The outpost was half warehouse, half chapel. Rusted symbols painted over fresher ones. The air hummed like wires about to spark. Kael's pack, what was left of it, waited in the shadows. 5 men. 1 woman, eyes silver in the dim. When they saw me, they went quiet. She's human, one hissed. She's mine, Kael said. And silence became obedience. I should have flinched. I didn't. Something inside me, the same thing that met monsters in kitchens, had started to remember itself. I met their stares and didn't blink. Kael nodded once, satisfied. We strike at dusk. Rowan handed me a pistol. You ever shot one? No. Point at what scares you most. Pull. I looked at Kael. That's bad advice. Best kind, she said. Dusk came. The river turned to black glass. The warehouse doors groaned open. We moved like ghosts through smoke. Inside, the order waited. Men in armor that shimmered between worlds. Eyes that didn't see light but heat. The fight was fire and teeth. Rowan's gun barked. Kael shifted mid-stride, bones cracking into grace, fur black as void. I saw him tear through a man who tried to draw a rune on his chest. I saw blood steam against steel. Then I saw the one thing Kael didn't. The figure at the altar. The priest of their false moon raising a blade etched with my name. I didn't think. I moved. The gun was heavy and wrong, but my hands remembered iron. The shot hit the priest in the shoulder. He dropped the knife but smiled. Little storm, he said, blood between his teeth. He'll kill you before he saves you. Kael turned at the sound. The wolf's eyes were not human. For a heartbeat, they didn't know me. Then they did. He blinked, and the beast bowed to the girl. We finished it together. When the last body fell, the warehouse burned. Outside, the city watched from across the river, indifferent. Rowan limped, laughing under her breath. You two are hell on property values. Kael wiped blood from his mouth. We're not done. Orders scattered. They'll rebuild. They always do. He looked at me then, eyes soft in the ruin light. But so will we. The mark on my throat throbbed once, a pulse that wasn't mine. Kael, I whispered. What happens now? He touched my cheek and the answer came quiet as snowfall. Now we learn what it means to be claimed. That night, sleep didn't come. When I closed my eyes, I saw the priest smile, the fire, Kael's shadow against flame. The bond between us hummed, alive, demanding. I whispered into the dark, You awake? His voice came back from the other side of the room. Always. Do you regret it? He was silent a long time. Then, only the peace I lost before I met you. I wanted to ask if he'd ever had peace. I wanted to say I didn't need saving, only choosing. Instead, I said, Good night. He answered like a promise. Never again. When dawn broke, the river carried ash instead of reflection. Somewhere beyond the smoke, wolves howled. Not mourning, not triumph, something older. Rowan whistled low. New day. Kael's gaze stayed on the horizon. New war. I felt the mark burn, gold now instead of red. And I understood. A one-night stand had never been just a mistake. It was a binding written in blood and moonlight. Somewhere, the moon smiled, and below it, in the ruins of our own making, I smiled back. The storm broke at dawn, and I stopped pretending I wasn't afraid. The city had emptied itself overnight, leaving only rain-slick streets and the ghost of sirens. We hid in an abandoned train depot where steel beams hummed with the weight of memories they didn't want anymore. Kael lay on a pallet of coats Rowan had dragged from a locker, his breath coming in broken drafts. He didn't dream quietly. Wolves never do. Each time he twitched, the light from the cracked window caught something wrong beneath his skin, a shimmer of silver crawling like frost through veins that should have healed. It was the bullet's poison, whispering things only he could hear. Rowan knelt beside him, knife in hand, point turned to the floor. He's burning from the inside. Can we stop it? She looked up, expression unreadable. Maybe, but you won't like how. I already don't like any of this. You'll have to anchor him. Anchor? When a wolf's body can't tell if it should live or shift, it tears itself apart. You've got the bond. You tell him which side wins. I laughed, sharp and humorless. I can barely tell myself which side wins, then fake it. The moon doesn't care about details. She pressed a small vial into my palm. This'll slow the silver. The rest is up to you. Then she left, because Rowan knows when to give you space, and when to let the walls listen. Kael's fever turned the air heavy. I sat beside him, watching sweat trace maps on his throat. His lips moved around words that belonged to another century. I leaned close. Kael, it's me. The beast inside him stirred. His fingers twitched, curling as if they wanted claws. Wren, he rasped. Don't come closer. Try to stop me. He shook his head, veins lit like wires. I see everything wrong I've ever done and the shadow that comes with it. Then look harder, I whispered, taking his hand. See me? His eyes opened, gold bleeding into gray, shifting like clouds over flame. For a moment, they didn't know me. Then they did. Barely. Your pulse, he said through his teeth. It steadies me. Good, then keep listening. The fever hit again. His spine arched, his body caught between forms. I climbed onto the floor beside him, pressing my hands against his chest. Stay with me. Can't. You can. You fought gods and ghosts. You can fight this, he laughed, breathless. You don't know what you're asking. Then teach me. He gripped my wrist, not to hurt, but to prove he still could. The mark at my throat pulsed like it had its own heart. You're calling the wolf. I'm calling the man. Same thing, he growled, then let him answer. I leaned forward until our foreheads touched. His heat burned through me, fever finding something that wasn't afraid anymore. The bond flared, not gentle, not kind, like iron in a forge. Images crashed into me that weren't mine. A river of fire, a woman's scream, Kael kneeling in ash with blood on his hands that looked like sunlight. Guilt, memory, promise. I gasped, and he caught the sound with his mouth before it became fear. The kiss wasn't mercy. It was survival. It wasn't sweet. It was a confession written in 2 heartbeats that refused to surrender. When he pulled back, his breath shook like it had just remembered how to be human. The fever broke. Rowan returned hours later, boots echoing through the hollow depot. She took one look at us, me pale and trembling, Kael sitting upright with wolf eyes gone human, and whistled low. Well, she said, either he lived or you both died interestingly. He's better, I said. Kael rubbed a hand over his face. For now. Rowan studied the empty vial beside me. You used the whole dose? No, I said quietly. It wasn't the vial. She glanced between us, smirked. Oh, got it. Don't, Kael warned, not judging, just noting. Rowan grabbed a pack and started reloading her gun. You stabilized him. Good. Now we run before the order triangulates the body count we left on the bridge. Where do we go? Kael's voice was raw but certain. Underground. The tunnels beneath the city were older than the wolves. Older than the order. They were arteries cut through stone, carved by hands that never asked permission. We followed the echo of dripping water until the air changed, cooler, thicker, humming with the ghosts of trains and prayers that never arrived. Rowan moved ahead with a flashlight. This way leads to the flood market. What's that? I asked, a place where rules forget to follow. Kael glanced at me, eyes still shadowed. Where debts are made and broken. Perfect, I muttered. He stopped suddenly. Wren, what? He touched his chest like something there had caught flame, The bond, it's changing. I felt it too. The mark at my throat warmed, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Is that bad? Depends on who's watching. Rowan killed the light. Someone is. The dark wasn't empty. You can feel when it's looking. A whisper crawled through the tunnel, too slow to be air, too soft to be language. Kael stiffened. He's here. Who? He didn't answer. The whisper turned into a voice I remembered from the kitchen, the one that called him Alpha with mockery and love all at once. Marius. His laughter slid over the tunnel walls. You can't burn the past, Kael. You can only carry it until it breaks you. Kael moved forward, claws flashing in half-light. Face me. Oh, I will, said the voice. But not while you're still pretending you can save her. The darkness behind us shifted. I spun, gun raised. Something moved, shadow inside shadow. Rowan fired twice. The sound vanished into a hiss, like bullets drowned mid-air. Marius's voice came closer, almost gentle. Did she tell you yet, Alpha? What she smelled like before you touched her? What she's becoming? Kael snarled. Enough. The air between them cracked, a ripple of power, old and heavy. The tunnel lights flickered once, revealing Marius not as smoke but as a man. Pale skin, eyes black as mirrors, smile too patient. He wasn't here to kill us. He was here to remind Kael what he owed. He looked at me. You should ask him about the first time he claimed a mate under this moon. Don't, Kael said. Why not? Truth's free. Not from you. Marius smiled wider. Oh, brother, you can't keep secrets from blood. The light died again. When it came back, he was gone. We reached the flood market before dawn. It wasn't a market yet, just tarps, crates, and the faint hum of magic that felt like neon before it sparks to life. Rowan found a dry corner behind a half-collapsed stall and threw her jacket down as a pillow. Sleep, she ordered. You two need it. I'll watch. Kael didn't argue, which scared me more than if he had. We sat in the dark, listening to water lap against the pillars. The fever had left him fragile, almost young. His hand found mine without asking. You should have run, he said. And miss all this quality time? He almost smiled. You don't understand what's coming. Then explain. He stared at the water. The moon we met under, it wasn't a stranger's sky. It was the blood claim moon. It marks what it wants. You can't undo it. You can only honor or defy it. And if I defy it? He looked at me then, something fierce and sad burning behind his eyes. You'll break. Or I will. I didn't flinch. Then we don't defy it. We redefine it, he exhaled, slow, shaky. You talk like someone who hasn't seen what the moon does to love. Maybe it's time the moon learned something new. He laughed softly, one of those laughs that sound like surrender wearing hope as disguise. You really are dangerous. Only to things that try to own me. He turned his head, met my gaze in the half-light. And if I already do, then you'd better take care of what's yours, Centaur. Then softly. Always. He brushed his thumb across the mark at my throat, tracing the crescent's edge. It pulsed, warm under his touch. The world narrowed to the space between us. The breath we shared, the promise neither of us dared name. When his lips found mine, it wasn't fever this time. It was recognition. The kiss deepened, slow, searching, like language rediscovered. The bond flared again, but differently. Not fire, not chains, just a light that made the dark jealous. His hand slid to the back of my neck, mine fisted in his shirt. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. I should stop. You won't. No, he admitted. I won't. He lay back, dragging me down beside him. We didn't sleep. We just listened. To the market breathing, to the river moving, to the space where our hearts refused to stay separate. Outside, the first light of dawn licked the water red. The blood-claim moon was waning, but not gone. And somewhere in the distance, a voice whispered through the echo of our joined heartbeats. 7 nights. Fever makes even gods look human. By the time dusk reached the factory tunnels, Kael's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He hit it well, jaw set, spine straight, but heat rolled off him like a forge. The cut in his palm had sealed, yet the silver from the bullet had left a cold line under the skin that didn't belong to him. Or maybe it did now. Maybe everything that hurt him belonged to me. Rowan noticed first. Of course she did. Shift sickness, she muttered, checking the bandage she'd tied too tight on purpose. He ran the beast too close to the bone. He'll either sleep it off or pick a fight with the moon. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said, eyes on him, we bar the door and pray he dreams of you and not of blood. I wanted to say what's the difference. I didn't. We took a room no one had used since the city still believed in ships. Steel lockers, a workbench, a cot that had seen too many men come home bruised and alive. Kael paced until pacing turned to listing, then turned to leaning, then surrendered to the edge of the cot like gravity had finally remembered his name. Stay back, he warned. Breath rough, I'm not a threat. You're every threat, he said, and shut his eyes like it hurt to look at me. I sat on the floor anyway, near his knee. The factory ticked as it cooled. Somewhere far above, a train's weight crossed a bridge and carried the last of twilight with it. When his fever broke open, it took the quiet with it. His fingers curled, claws half out, then sheathed again. He whispered a name that wasn't mine, and then remembered himself, and bit the sound in half. I reached up, palm to his sternum, the way you ground a storm. His chest rose into my hand like breath recognized me. Easy, I murmured. You're here. He turned his face, heat-slick hair against my wrist. Don't let me hurt you. You won't. I might, he said, honesty like a knife. He would. His mouth tightened. The shadow that wears my shape when I've bled too much. The part that learned killing before it learned mercy. Then we'll teach it a new lesson. He didn't laugh. Fever doesn't find things funny, but his shoulders loosened a fraction. That was something. I hummed nonsense under my breath. Rain on alley brick, the rhythm of tires over bridge grating, the kind of melody you make when you're trying to turn a battlefield back into a room. His heartbeat found the tempo and followed it. Rowan watched from the doorway, arms crossed. When she saw the tremor in his jaw fade, she exhaled like someone who'd been holding a match in her mouth. That bond, she said, half to herself. It's going to ruin us and save us in the same night. Welcome to my life, I said. She almost smiled. Then the smile died. The hair on her arms lifted. Mine did too. Do you feel that? I whispered. Rowan's hand went to the gun at her hip. No wind, no rats. Even the pipes shut up, her voice thinned. Down, the light stuttered and blew. Not in a pop, but in a slow, careful unmaking, one bulb after the next. Darkness pressed its face against the room's glass and licked. In the black, Kael's fevered breath quickened. The shadow in him lifted its head. A voice came through the vent above us, lazy and too close. Alpha! Rowan's finger froze on the trigger. That voice is not on any guest list. The vent cover grated. Cold swept in like night remembering teeth. I caught the shape a blink too late. Something dropping like liquid shadow, catching the floor without sound, standing up into a man with a smile learned from knives. He wore no armor. He didn't need any. Kael sat up so fast the cot screamed. His fever vanished under a different heat. Marius. The name tasted like old blood in the room. Rowan swore. A soft, almost reverent, oh, hell. The one you took the title from? The one the order raised back up, Marius said, amused, with better manners and worse news. He looked at me then. Not like prey, like a map. So this is the one-night saint who ruined your good habits. Pretty thing. Wrong moon. Don't talk to her, Kael said, standing. The shaking was gone. When he stepped in front of me, the furnace of him made the cold back up a step. Marius tilted his head. Or what? Or we find out how many times you can die before a god gets bored. Not enough to teach you humility, Marius said, and took a slow breath of the air I'd breathed. His eyes warmed. You do pick beautifully, Kael. She smells like first rain and last rites. Rowan fired. The shot hit Marius in the heart. He smiled with his mouth and not his eyes, and the bullet wept silver on the floor like the room had nicked a vein. The hole closed. He glanced down at it, bored, and then back up like we'd all been rude. I hate Revenant tricks, Rowan muttered, ejecting the spent casing. Don't waste rounds, Kael said without looking away. He's warded. Not warded, Marius corrected. Promised. His gaze gentled in a way that made my stomach want to leave me. And promises are expensive things to break, little storm. The mark at my throat burned. I didn't step back. He noticed that too. He sighed happily. You have teeth. Thank the goddess. I'd hate for him to waste a claim on something that couldn't bite back. You should leave, I said, and the steadiness of my voice surprised us both. I should, he agreed. But your moon is incoming, and my orders are clear. Return the girl before the binding fixes, or burn the city teaching them what happens when wolves get sentimental. He moved. I didn't see him cross the space, one moment and then the next. His fingers around my wrist, cold that wasn't temperature pouring up my arm. The shadows in the corners leaned closer, eager. Kael shifted mid-breath, bone, fur, unmaking, remaking, and hit Marius so hard the lockers starred where he landed. The Revenant laughed like something had finally gotten interesting. They were fast in different ways. Kael fought like storm surge, all weight, inevitability, the kind of strength you don't bargain with because you can't. Marius fought like undertow, nothing on the surface, then everything gone where you can't touch it. Claws met a body that chose when it mattered to be solid. Teeth found a throat that remembered how to be smoke. Blow by blow, they taught the room what monsters looked like when they loved something more than their own names. Rowan flanked, cold, precise, aiming for sinew when bone was a rumor. She carved Marius open twice. He closed each time like wounds were old letters he'd already answered. When he finally bled in earnest, it was black, and it smoked. Stop healing, I demanded, chest heaving. He glanced at me, delighted. Make me, so I tried. I didn't have spells. I had a memory of iron and a piece of Kael that had learned my heartbeat. I stepped into Marius's reach and let fear sharpen me. When his hand came up to crush my throat, I didn't dodge. I turned my chin into it, set the iron charm between skin and grip, and felt something old complain. He flinched. It wasn't much. It was enough. Kael's shoulder hit his ribs. Rowan's boot found his knee. The Revenant dropped. I drove the charm into the hollow of his collarbone and whispered the only prayer I knew. Let this count. The floor remembered how to be a floor. Marius hissed like I'd poured sunlight down his shirt and rolled backward. Out of reach, up on his feet, smiling again, but this time with a dent in the smile. You've got nerve, he said, admiration and appetite in the same tone. And nerve makes rules bend. He lifted his hand. Shadows climbed the walls like ivy. When they reached the ceiling, they flowered into sigils that made my eyes water to look at. The temperature dropped. Ice crawled from the vents. Enough practice, he said, like a teacher bored by his own lesson. We'll finish it under the right sky. What sky is that? I asked, though I already knew. Bloodclaim moon, he said. 7 nights. The city will be red and lovely, and every old rule will wake up to watch. He looked at Kael. All hunger. Bring her to the river, Alpha, or I will take her from your throat. Kael stepped forward, teeth showing. Try. Marius's gaze slid back to me. Something like pity, no, like recognition, moved in it and was gone. He'll do it, he said softly. He'll stand between you and all the knives. He'll bleed himself into a promise and call it love. Ask him what price he paid last time. I killed you, Kael said, voice iron. You killed what I was, Marius corrected, and the lights that weren't lit flickered anyway. The order taught me to be something else. He cocked his head, listening to a silence I couldn't hear. Time. Your shadowkeeper on the cameras is about to send the city's men with badges. Boring. We'll make a better stage. He stepped backward into the dark. It took him like water takes a secret. The last thing he left us was a breath on my face that wasn't wind and a sentence that tasted like promise. 7 nights. Try to keep him alive until then, little storm, the factory remembered to hum. My knees remembered how to shake. Rowan put a hand on the doorway to keep the room from tilting and then swore, colorfully and profanely, for a long time. Kael stood with his hands open, claws half there, half not, chest rising too fast. There was blood on his mouth that wasn't all Marius's. I reached for him. He didn't move away, and somehow that was worse. What did he mean? I asked. About last time. Kael shut his eyes. The lines around them were older than his face. I chose a mate, he said. I chose wrong. Wrong how? I loved her honestly, he said, broken and careful. And it made me merciless. I tore my pack into pieces to keep a vow we should not have made under that moon. The order came to break me and found me halfway done. Rowan's gaze flicked between us, calculating, protective. You don't tell her that tonight, she said. You tell her that after we've moved 3 times and stolen 2 cars. Kael opened his eyes and found mine. The fever wasn't back, but something that looked like it had learned to live in fever was. He will come for you, he said. And I will be cruel about it. Be cruel to him, I said. Not to yourself. He huffed a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. I don't know the difference. Then learn. He? His mouth tightened. The shadow that wears my shape when I've bled too much. The part that learned killing before it learned mercy. Then we'll teach it a new lesson. He didn't laugh. Fever doesn't find things funny, but his shoulders loosened a fraction. That was something. I hummed nonsense under my breath. Rain on alley brick, the rhythm of tires over bridge grating, the kind of melody you make when you're trying to turn a battlefield back into a room. His heartbeat found the tempo and followed it. Rowan watched from the doorway, arms crossed. When she saw the tremor in his jaw fade, she exhaled like someone who'd been holding a match in her mouth. That bond, she said, half to herself. It's going to ruin us and save us in the same night. Welcome to my life, I said. She almost smiled. Then the smile died. The hair on her arms lifted. Mine did too. Do you feel that? I whispered. Rowan's hand went to the gun at her hip. No wind, no rats. Even the pipes shut up. Her voice thinned. Down. The light stuttered and blew. Not in a pop, but in a slow, careful unmaking, one bulb after the next. Darkness pressed its face against the room's glass and licked. In the black, Kael's fevered breath quickened. The shadow in him lifted its head. A voice came through the vent above us, lazy and too close. Alpha. Rowan's finger froze on the trigger. That voice is not on any guest list. The vent cover grated. Cold swept in like night remembering teeth. I caught the shape a blink too late. Something dropping like liquid shadow, catching the floor without sound, standing up into a man with a smile learned from knives. He wore no armor. He didn't need any. Kael sat up so fast the cot screamed. His fever vanished under a different heat. Marius. The name tasted like old blood in the room. Rowan swore. A soft, almost reverent oh hell. The one you took the title from? The one the order raised back up, Marius said, amused. With better manners and worse news. He looked at me then. Not like prey, like a map. So this is the one-night saint who ruined your good habits. Pretty thing. Wrong moon. Don't talk to her, Kael said, standing. The shaking was gone. When he stepped in front of me, the furnace of him made the cold back up a step. Marius tilted his head. Or what? Or we find out how many times you can die before a god gets bored. Not enough to teach you humility, Marius said, and took a slow breath of the air I'd breathed. His eyes warmed. You do pick beautifully, Kael. She smells like first rain and last rites. Rowan fired. The shot hit Marius in the heart. He smiled with his mouth and not his eyes, and the bullet wept silver on the floor like the room had nicked a vein. The hole closed. He glanced down at it, bored, and then back up like we'd all been rude. I hate Revenant tricks, Rowan muttered, ejecting the spent casing. Don't waste rounds, Kael said without looking away. He's warded. Not warded, Marius corrected. Promised. His gaze gentled in a way that made my stomach want to leave me. And promises are expensive things to break, little storm. The mark at my throat burned. I didn't step back. He noticed that too. He sighed happily. You have teeth. Thank the goddess. I'd hate for him to waste a claim on something that couldn't bite back. You should leave, I said, and the steadiness of my voice surprised us both. I should, he agreed. But your moon is incoming, and my orders are clear. Return the girl before the binding fixes, or burn the city teaching them what happens when wolves get sentimental. He moved. I didn't see him cross the space. One moment and then the next. His fingers around my wrist, cold that wasn't temperature pouring up my arm. The shadows in the corners leaned closer, eager. Kael shifted mid-breath, bone, fur, unmaking, remaking, and hit Marius so hard the lockers starred where he landed. The Revenant laughed like something had finally gotten interesting. They were fast in different ways. Kael fought like Storm Surge, all weight, inevitability, the kind of strength you don't bargain with because you can't. Marius fought like Undertow. Nothing on the surface, then everything gone where you can't touch it. Claws met a body that chose when it mattered to be solid. Teeth found a throat that remembered how to be smoke. Blow by blow, they taught the room what monsters looked like when they loved something more than their own names. Rowan flanked, cold, precise, aiming for sinew when bone was a rumor. She carved Marius open twice. He closed each time like wounds were old letters he'd already answered. When he finally bled in earnest, it was black, and it smoked. "Stop healing," I demanded, chest heaving. He glanced at me, delighted. "Make me." So I tried. I didn't have spells. I had a memory of iron and a piece of Kael that had learned my heartbeat. I stepped into Marius's reach and let fear sharpen me. When his hand came up to crush my throat, I didn't dodge. I turned my chin into it, set the iron charm between skin and grip, and felt something old complain. He flinched. It wasn't much. It was enough. Kael's shoulder hit his ribs. Rowan's boot found his knee. The Revenant dropped. I drove the charm into the hollow of his collarbone and whispered the only prayer I knew. Let this count. The floor remembered how to be a floor. Marius hissed like I'd poured sunlight down his shirt and rolled backward. Out of reach, up on his feet, smiling again. But this time with a dent in the smile. You've got nerve, he said. Admiration and appetite in the same tone. And nerve makes rules bend. He lifted his hand. Shadows climbed the walls like ivy. When they reached the ceiling, they flowered into sigils that made my eyes water to look at. The temperature dropped. Ice crawled from the vents. Enough practice, he said, like a teacher bored by his own lesson. We'll finish it under the right sky. What sky is that? I asked, though I already knew. Bloodclaim moon, he said. 7 nights. The city will be red and lovely, and every old rule will wake up to watch. He looked at Kael. All hunger. Bring her to the river, Alpha, or I will take her from your throat. Kael stepped forward, teeth showing. Try. Marius's gaze slid back to me. Something like pity, no, like recognition, moved in it and was gone. He'll do it, he said softly. He'll stand between you and all the knives. He'll bleed himself into a promise and call it love. Ask him what price he paid last time. I killed you, Kael said, voice iron. You killed what I was, Marius corrected, and the lights that weren't lit flickered anyway. The order taught me to be something else. He cocked his head, listening to a silence I couldn't hear. Time. Your shadow keeper on the cameras is about to send the city's men with badges. Boring. We'll make a better stage. He stepped backward into the dark. It took him like water takes a secret. The last thing he left us was a breath on my face that wasn't wind and a sentence that tasted like promise. 7 nights. Try to keep him alive until then, little storm. The factory remembered to hum. My knees remembered how to shake. Rowan put a hand on the doorway to keep the room from tilting, and then swore, colorfully and profanely, for a long time. Kael stood with his hands open, claws half there, half not, chest rising too fast. There was blood on his mouth that wasn't all Marius's. I reached for him. He didn't move away, and somehow that was worse. What did he mean? I asked. About last time. Kael shut his eyes. The lines around them were older than his face. I chose a mate, he said. I chose wrong. Wrong how? I loved her honestly, he said, broken and careful. And it made me merciless. I tore my pack into pieces to keep a vow we should not have made under that moon. The order came to break me and found me halfway done. Rowan's gaze flicked between us, calculating, protective. You don't tell her that tonight, she said. You tell her that after we've moved 3 times and stolen 2 cars. Kael opened his eyes and found mine. The fever wasn't back, but something that looked like it had learned to live in fever was. He will come for you, he said, and I will be cruel about it. Be cruel to him, I said. Not to yourself. He huffed a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. I don't know the difference. Then learn. 100. 2 and a shadow more, he said, eyeing Kael mid-shift, eyeing me like I was a question, eyeing Rowan like she'd already paid him most of what she had. You know the price. Truth, Rowan said, climbing in. 1 each.
No lies on my river. Kael helped me over the gunwale.
The boat dipped like a nod. The ferryman's eyes cut to the crescent at my throat. Careful, girl, he said. The river keeps what bleeds for her. I know, I said, and didn't. We slid into black water while the floodlights searched air where we had been. The city limbed itself in the slick. The ferryman didn't look back. Your truth? He said to Rowan. She rolled her shoulders, smudged mascara becoming war paint. I'd die for him, she said, nodding to Kael. And I'd kill him if it saved her. Accepted, said the river. Your truth, he told Kael. Kael held my gaze and didn't blink. I'm afraid I will choose wrong, he said. Again. Accepted, said the river, softer. And you, he said to me. 1,000 easy answers rose, brave ones, clever ones. I gave the ugly one. I want him, even if it hurts. The words left my mouth like sparrows released and turned into hawks halfway through the air. Accepted, the ferryman said, like a priest who loves disasters. We cut under the bridge where the glass had broken last night. The city sighed overhead. On the far bank, the ferryman led us off beneath the flood market, tents and tarps and stalls closed tight, night watch lamps burning blue. He raised 2 fingers in blessing or warning. Don't owe anybody else tonight, he said. Debts make good bait. Rowan pressed a coin into his palm anyway. He didn't look at it. He never would. The river spends differently. We moved into the market's sleeping gut. Smells linger even when the sellers don't. Star anise and old knives, citrus and burned cloth, the mineral honesty of bone. A bead curtain knocked once against a hand that wasn't there. The stall behind it was open a sliver. Inside, a woman of indeterminate age with hair like floodwater and eyes like the spaces between ribs. Before her, bowls of bones polished to a shine, strings of knuckles like rosaries for sinners who know what they are. The bone reader, Rowan murmured. I know, Kael said. You brought wolves to my table, the woman said, as if the table had noticed first. Sit, the night is nosy, we sat. She took my hands without asking, and I let her because asking would have been worse. Her thumbs pressed the lines in my palms, then the pulse at my wrist, then the crescent bruised into being at my throat. Not a bite, she said. A promise pretending to be a bruise. Clever moon, can you break it? I asked, surprised at my own question and the brittle in it. Do you want it broken? I didn't answer. Truth was still in the air from the ferry. It would bite if I lied. Kael's knee pressed against mine under the table. Small, accidental. Not accidental at all. The bone reader smiled very slightly. No. You want to learn to carry it without drowning. Good. Drowning is a fool's theatrics. She poured a handful of small bones into a metal bowl and shook them until they sang. When she spilled them, they made a map. Revenant, she said, tracing a white line with her nail, raised on a promise fouled by fear. He is not your enemy's shadow. He is your lover's guilt wearing someone else's teeth. Kael didn't move. I could feel the stillness in him like a trick of a frozen river. Beautiful and dangerous if you trust it too far. How do we end him? Rowan asked. Practical always. The bone reader arranged 3 vertebrae into a crescent. You don't. You end his debt. A glance at Kael, not unkind. You return the name stolen the night you bought your crown with blood. Marius, I said. Not the one he wears now, she corrected. The one his mother gave him by the river where he took his first breath. Reclaim the first name, drown the second. Revenants can't follow what no longer owes them. And where? Rowan began. The bone reader flicked a sliver of scapula toward the far end of the market. Scrap saints, she said. She'll build you a mouth for the river to speak through. Feed it iron. Feed it truth. Price, I thought. Price, the bone reader said aloud, and smiled like she liked me. I take the memory you have of being small. You will miss it on hard days, but you don't need it anymore. My mouth opened, closed. Take it, I said, shaky and relieved, and found there was less room in my chest for flinching. It hurt. It helped. We paid with more than coin. We left with less than fear. The woman who made saints out of scrap worked in a stall strung with wind chimes shaped from engine parts in grace. Tamsin, Rowan called her. She took one look at us and started laying out rusted ship iron like relics. You want a river mouth? She said. Open enough to speak, hard enough to bite. Why? To turn a name to water, I said. She grunted, pleased. I like when the young ask the old for knives. Sparks flew. Iron learned a curve. By the time the market's lights explained dawn to the sky, she'd given us a thing that was not quite a circle and not quite a trap. All angles and invitation. It fit my 2 hands. It fit the river's idea of a jaw. Feed it a first name, Tamsin said, and tapped my forehead with a wrench like a blessing. And don't forget, names don't tell you who you are. They tell you who expects to be obeyed. Price? She squinted at Kael. Take your ring. I don't wear one, he said. You will. She cut a strip from his shirt where it had gone to thread, tied it around my wrist, and nodded at the iron mouth between my palms. There. Now it won't take the wrong thing. We stepped back into wind that tasted like wet stone and inevitability. Now the truth, I said, turning to Kael while the market slept with its eyes open. All of it. Rowan faded an elegant 2 steps away. Listening range, fighting range, far enough not to look like she was choosing sides. He didn't turn it into story. He laid it down like tools. I challenged Marius the year the river flooded and the alleys bred more wolves than priests, Kael said. He was cruel in the easy ways. I was cruel in the careful ones. I told myself the pack needed a steady hand. I didn't tell myself I liked the weight. He swallowed. The moon saw me. She gave me a mate under a sky that makes truth flare and mercy hide. Malin, he said, and the name made the air taste of rain on old wood. She liked the crown more than the neck it bruised. I loved her anyway. When the order came with their papers and their promises, she wanted both. I refused. She told them where we would be. She thought to negotiate after. There's no after with men like that. His voice didn't shake. His hands did. I killed Marius to keep a vow to a woman who had already traded me. The order raised him because they like symbols that bleed. They killed her because the easiest way to ruin an alpha is to make him agree with his guilt. He looked at me, then the way men look at fire they want to step into even though they know what it does to skin. I will not make you a crown that hurts your throat. You won't, I said, and meant it more than I could explain. We don't wear crowns. We sharpen them. Rowan cleared her throat. Hate to interrupt catharsis, she said, but we've been watched since Tamsin started welding. Either it's a raccoon who likes a good romance, or we've got company. The flood market breathed in. Tents that should have sighed with wind barely moved. Shadows that should have huddled politely began to lean. Not the order, Kael said, nostrils flaring. Older. The first shape pulled itself out of what wasn't there. Not men, not wolves. The city's saints, the ones made of rust and story, had come down from their corners to see if we carried their names right. Behind them, thin as regret, the Revenant's smile stitched itself across the dark. Little storm, Marius said cheerfully, as if he'd just remembered a favorite song. Your friends throw a good wake. He didn't step closer. He didn't need to. The shadows did it for him, like a tide deciding the shore had been stingy. Rowan drew. Kael shifted a breath and a half. I lifted the iron mouth and felt it hum, eager. Where? I said to the river. It answered with a cold finger under my ribs, pointing me down the market's spine to a slit of water glinting between pilings. The old ferry slip Kael had named by the way his voice softened. We ran. The saints moved when we did, creaking. Benevolent, terrifying. The order had taught me to fear paperwork and men with clean hands. The river taught me to fear what loves you enough to be honest. Rowan clapped her hands once, sharp. School later. Church now. We looked at her. She jerked her chin toward the far corridor. Old maintenance chapel 3 levels down. Not the orders. A real one, built by men who were afraid of rivers. The kind of place where oaths stick. Kael's mouth thinned. You want us to bind. I want the thing that stares out of vents to think twice before stealing her, Rowan said. And I want you steady when the fever comes back. We're not doing a wedding in a boiler room, I said, half wild, half laughing from something that wasn't funny. Rowan shrugged. Who said anything about pretty? This is survival. She met my eyes, and you don't have to agree. I looked at Kael, the man who'd covered my heart with his hand on a bridge because it made sense to his bones. The man who kneeled when the beast would have liked to bite. The man who spoke vows like they were weapons he meant to use on himself before anyone else could. Tell me truth, I said softly. Not strategy. He didn't reach for me. He didn't look away. I want you under my name because the world feels like a place I can fight when you are, he said. I want you under no name at all because you are yourself, and I have no right to cage that. I want you alive. Everything else is a detail I will kill for. Then we go, I said, and we do it our way. Our way? Rowan echoed, wary and interested. I held up the iron charm, its edge dark with Revenant blood. No altars that aren't ours, no words I don't understand, and if any god shows up to collect, I get to say yes or no. Rowan grinned like someone had just handed her a knife with her name already on it. Now you sound pack. We moved. The chapel was a square of old tile and older air, a little altar of ship iron, and a cracked painting of a river saint who decided to look away. Candles slept in dusty glass. Rowan struck a match. The room remembered fire. Kael took my hands. The world hushed. Wren, he said, and my name in his mouth was a cord pulling me back to shore. By breath and fang and rain I keep you. His voice wavered once, then steadied. Not as a chain. As a door I will stand in, as a wall I will hold, as a name I will not let anyone rewrite. It should have sounded like a cage. It didn't. It sounded like he'd found a way to be between me and the night, without standing between me and myself. My turn, I said, and my throat tried to close on it, because vows are harder to say than to hear. Kael, by blood I choose you, I whispered, and my pulse leaped against his fingers, eager, treacherous. Not to fix you, to witness you, to call you back when the shadow gets loud, to put my body where your past wants to hit you, to be the storm that moves with you, not against you, to make the moon regret thinking it owned us first. The candles breathed in. We cut our palms. Not deep, enough, iron-kissed blood. We pressed our hands and the heat that found us wasn't fever. The air tightened, not choking, cinching, like a dress you finally learned how to fasten yourself. Something old in the room said yes, and something older outside scratched its name into the door and left us alone for one lucky heartbeat. When we leaned into each other, it was not gentle, and it was not cruel. It was the kind of closeness you use when the night has been trying to pry your ribs apart all day, and you are finally allowed to put your heart back in. We didn't chase heat. We let it find us and pass by like a tide that promised it would come back. When his mouth found mine, the vow sealed. When mine found his pulse, the vow learned its rhythm, fade to dark. We came back to ourselves with ash in our hair and grit under our knees, and Rowan pretending to look away so hard it made her shoulders shake. Congratulations, she said dryly. You've invented boiler room marriage. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Do we get a certificate? Absolutely not, she sobered. We do get a problem. Our cameras caught order cars near the tunnel mouth, 4 minutes out, and Marius wasn't lying about time. 7 nights isn't a lot to teach a shadow new tricks. Kael's eyes were different in the candlelight. Not brighter, not darker. Steadier. The tremor was gone. The fever had moved its bed. We won't wait for him to choose the ground, he said. We take it. Where? Rowan asked. I closed my eyes and listened. Not with ears, with whatever part of me had learned the music of him. The city shifted under my feet. Pipes sang. The river turned in its sleep. Somewhere, something like bells underwater answered to a name I didn't know yet. The river, I said, but not his altar. Ours. Kael nodded, like he'd been waiting for me to say it. Old ferry slip on the North Bend. The first place I saw the sky bleed when I was a boy. It remembers truths the Order can't paint over. Rowan checked her magazine, slammed it home, grinned like she was ready to set a god on fire. Field trip. We blew the candles. The room gave us back to the corridor. Above, sirens climbed a ladder. We ran the other way. At the end of the tunnel, a maintenance door opened onto a slice of forgotten riverfront. Ice broke against rotting pilings. The city's lights were a crown that didn't know who it belonged to. Kael stood with his face to the wind and drew it in like he was tasting fate for poison. 7 nights, he said. More to the water than to us. 6, Rowan corrected, checking her watch. Plenty, I lied. He looked at me. The vow between us hummed, low and content and a little afraid. He tucked my hair behind my ear with fingers that had learned gentleness the hard way. We'll need allies, he said. Names that don't show up in order ledgers. The bone reader in the flood market. The ferryman who never takes coin twice. The woman who makes saints out of scrap. And the truth you owe me, I said. All of it. No pretty lies, he nodded. I'll give you the worst of me before anyone else can. Good, I said. I like knowing where to put the knives, Rowan snorted. I'm starting to suspect the moon didn't ruin him. You did. Maybe I fixed him until he could ruin himself better, I said. We all smiled. A little broken, a little real. The wind shifted. Somewhere behind us, the factory breathed in a way that meant company. Rowan cocked her head. They're here. I took Kael's bleeding hand in mine. Then we start tonight. The first floodlight found us, bright as confession. Figures spilled onto the concrete, men with guns and men with eyes like coins. The Order had brought their paperwork and their monsters. Marius's shadow did not join them. Not yet. The city held its breath. Kael squeezed my fingers once. Breathe, he said. Like the bridge. Like the first night the moon remembered me. I did. The world stepped closer. And in the white glare of someone else's certainty, the 3 of us turned to meet it. An alpha with fever taught to heal. A woman with iron under her tongue. And a friend who didn't know how to stop laughing at doom. 7 nights. The Revenant had promised. We did not plan to give him that long. Floodlights flatten faces into masks. They erase nuance and leave only choices. The first beam found us at the river's edge, white and pitiless. Men poured from unmarked vans, helmets, visors, bodies moving like a single idea. The Order doesn't hire cowards. It manufactures them into something worse. Rowan smiled like a coin flipping. Showtime, Kael didn't smile. He stepped half a pace in front of me, hand finding mine, vow humming like a live wire between our skins. It steadied him. It steadied me more. Breathe, he said again. The floodlights stuttered once, just once, as if the river blinked. Then the guns came up. Rowan fired first. Not for blood, for rhythm. 2 sharp barks to break the Order's timing, a third to crack a headlamp and carve us a shadow. Kael moved into it the way wolves move into tall grass, with purpose, with joy, held on a short leash. I stayed with the vow. It's not magic, not the way the Order names it. It's a language the body remembers, breath to breath, bone to bone, storm taught to heal by a steadier sky. When he shifted, I didn't step away. I put my palm to the line where his spine learned to be something else, and whispered the only word that has ever gentled anything wild. Here. The beast rose along his ribs, dark and beautiful. Not a cage, a crown. He hit the first wave of men like inevitability. The Order believes in rules more than gods. Their rules didn't help them bleed less. A shape detached from the floodlights. A magistrate in a coat that tried to make him look taller than his courage. He held up a folder sealed in black wax like it was a shield. By writ, he shouted, voice amplified. The woman marked in crescent returns to our custody. The alpha relinquishes his unlawful claim. Unlawful. The word made the vow bare its teeth. Wren, Rowan called without looking. Burn it. I stepped forward. The magistrate smelled like ink and cold sweat. He flinched when I didn't. I took the folder, tore the seal with my teeth, and fed the paper to a rusted barrel that had once warmed honest hands. It went up fast, the way dry things do when they've been waiting too long to be fire. The magistrate sputtered. That's recycling, I said, and shot his loudspeaker. Chaos loves honesty. The lines broke. Kael drove them back into their vans. Rowan emptied a magazine into tires and authority. When one of the order men tried to draw a sigil on his visor, I put a bullet where his hand would remember it. I am not a marksman. I am someone who has learned that shaking and shooting are not mutually exclusive. Now, Rowan said, catching my wrist. Off the stage. How? The river was black mouth and glass teeth. She whistled. The boat came like a rumor you want to believe. Narrow, low, old wood made slick by 1,000 nights. A man stood in the stern pole as if the water belonged to him. He wore a cap pulled low and a coat that had never known summer. His face could have been 30 or a... At the slip, the water opened like a memory turning its face up to be kissed. I knelt, iron jaw across my thighs, and spoke the first prayer I've ever known wasn't a lie. Give me his first name. The river stilled. Then it bubbled, amused. Please, I added, because manners matter when you ask old things to do new work. A sound rose. Not a word, a syllable. Not Marius, a soft, muddy vowel, and a consonant you make when you're small and trying out your mouth. The name a mother gives when the world is new. I caught it in the iron mouth. It cut my palms like paper shame. I held on. Now, I said, standing, turning, breath as steady as I could lie it. Come take back what isn't yours. Marius stepped out of everyone else's shadows into his own. He looked suddenly so young, and then not at all. No, he said gently. Give it to me and I'll stop. You'll stop when we drown you, Rowan offered helpfully. He smiled, tired. You can't drown what knows all the bottoms of things. Kael moved. The fight was faster than vows and uglier than sermons. He drove the Revenant toward the slip, while Rowan kept men with guns from getting confused and helping the wrong side. The saints watched like judges who hadn't made up their minds yet. I waited. Waiting is a weapon. When Marius misstepped, when one shadow didn't catch his foot because I had put my heel on its tail, I lunged. Iron-kissed throat. First name met second. The air yelped. The river reached. Now, I whispered, and the slip took him, not like drowning, not like falling, like being called home by someone whose voice you'd been pretending not to hear. For one heartbeat, the Revenant's eyes were a boy's. He looked at Kael the way men look at roads they didn't take. Tell my mother, he said without lips, that I remember the fishhooks and the bread. And then the river closed its teeth. Silence snapped tight. The saints shivered back where they belonged. Rowan exhaled and sat down like her bones had been overpromised. The iron mouth cooled in my hands until it was only a circle again. Kael stood at the edge, fur receding into skin, chest heaving. The night put frost in his hair. His eyes found mine and softened like they had learned how to do a new thing and liked it. We did not get a victory. We got 30 seconds. The water surged. Hands, no, not hands. Memory with fingers. Came up out of black and closed around Kael's ankle. Not Marius. The order's debt. The 100 names we hadn't learned yet. They dragged. He went to one knee, caught himself on concrete, teeth bared. Go, he barked. Run! Not anymore, I said, and reached for him. Rowan fired into water that didn't care about bullets. The saints creaked, uncertain. The ferryman's laugh came thin across the dark like a warning bell. Price? The river said. What do you want? I said, breath ghosting. Something you haven't already given away. I didn't look at Kael. I didn't need to. I cut my palm again and let my blood fall into the slip. Take the night I met him, I said. Take the rain. Take the alley. Leave me everything I've learned since. The river considered. It likes bribes with poetry. Done, it said, and the hands loosened enough for Kael to lunge backward onto the concrete. He hit hard. I dragged harder. We both laughed because we were not drowned yet. Then the floodlights found us again, order vans at the market's mouth. Men running, sirens making up their minds. The ferryman's boat a shadow that might not arrive in time. Rowan standing alone between us and a world that doesn't know how to stop. Go, she said, eyes bright. I'll hold them. Rowan, Kael began. I'm not dying, she said calmly. I'm working, she winked at me. Try not to invent a new religion while I'm gone, poet. She stepped forward into the floodlights, like a saint in leather, and fired until the night clapped. Kael pulled me up, breath ragged. We have to move. My palm bled on his wrist. My heart hammered under his hand. The mark at my throat burned, and then went cold. I looked up. The moon had climbed higher, not full yet, nearly. The blood-claim knight turned her face toward us and showed teeth she had borrowed from stories. 6 nights, I said. Kael's jaw set. Too long. Not long enough, Rowan called. And then the floodlight swallowed her, and the scene closed like a fist. I turned the iron mouth in my hands. It felt lighter. It felt like it wanted more. What happens now? I asked. He met my eyes. The boy who had killed for a vow. The man who would rather be ruined than be safe. The wolf who had learned to bend without breaking when I put my palm to his sternum and told him here. Now, he said, and the vow hummed agreement. We make the city pick a side. The river rose and fell undecided. The ferryman's skiff cut a line through black. The saints settled into their bolts. The order advanced steady as law, and we ran into it. 3 oaths and a mouthful of iron. Not enough time and too much truth, because some stories don't wait for permission. I did not look back. I didn't remember the rain. I remembered everything after. The sky was the color of a wound that refused to heal. By the time the moon rose, bloated, red, merciless, the city had forgotten its name. Smoke crawled up from the riverfront, slow and deliberate, as if the world itself was exhaling sin. The blood-claim moon had come to collect what it was owed, and it wanted everything. We stood on the same bridge where it had all begun. The ghosts of the fallen still lingered in the cracks between the stones. Kael's hand rested against the hilt of his blade, but his eyes never left me. He didn't look like the alpha who had once terrified his enemies. He looked like a man about to fight his own reflection. Once it starts, he said, I don't stop, not until one of us is gone. Marius won't come alone. He nodded. He never does. But tonight neither do I. Rowan stepped from the shadows, her coat torn, face streaked with blood and ash. The Order is burning their own archives. Marius called every revenant left in the city. Whatever's not nailed down will bleed before dawn. I met her eyes. You should have left when you had the chance. She smiled the way only people who've lost too much can. And missed the apocalypse? Please. Kael's wolf shimmered beneath his skin, restless. He's close. The air changed first, temperature dropping, wind bending sideways. Then the river began to boil. Out of that heat and cold together came Marius. He walked across the water as if gravity had signed a contract with him. His body was light and shadow stitched together by memory. 7 nights, he said. And you're still pretending you can change the story. Kael stepped forward. Stories end when someone stops fighting for them. Marius's smile was sharp enough to cut the night. Then fight me, brother. Let the moon judge which of us deserves her favor. The blood-claim moon pulsed above us like a heart. Kael shifted. The sound was bones breaking and healing all at once. Wolf and man merging until there was no difference. I felt the vow between us tighten like a drawn bow. My own blood hummed with it, the mark at my throat burning gold against the crimson light. The fight began with silence. When Kael moved, the world bent. The bridge cracked under his weight. Marius met him halfway, claws of black smoke cutting through stone. They collided like thunder. Sparks flew where their strikes met, silver against shadow, promise against punishment. Rowan fired from the sidelines, bullets flaring white as they hit revenants crawling from the river. Each one that fell dissolved into steam, their screams feeding the moon. I grabbed the iron-mouthed Tamsin had made for me, the relic now glowing with its own heartbeat. The river below chanted my name. Wren, it said, in voices not its own. End this, Kael roared, a sound that was not of this world. Marius's claws raked across his side, tearing fur and flesh. Kael staggered, blood spilling black in the red light. Marius seized the moment, slamming him to the ground. Look at what you've become, Marius whispered, pressing a knee into Kael's chest. A beast pretending to love. Kael grinned through blood. Better a beast who loves than a man who serves. He drove his claws up through Marius's ribs, but the Revenant only laughed. You can't kill what the moon already owns. Then maybe she'll take a trade, I said. I ran forward, iron mouth raised high. The relic pulsed in time with my heart, the air around it distorting. Marius turned toward me, smile fading. Don't. Too late, I said. She's listening to me now. I slammed the iron mouth into the stone between us. The ground shook. The river surged upward in a column of red light. Every name it had ever swallowed screamed at once. Marius's form flickered. You don't know what you're doing! I know enough. Kael crawled toward me, reaching out, his eyes bright with the same fear he'd shown the night he claimed me. Wren, the relic opened, not with sound, but with silence so absolute it tore through everything. The red light folded inward, devouring shadow and silver alike. I saw Marius's face twist, not in rage, but in relief. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then he was gone, dissolved, released, erased. The silence broke. The bridge cracked open, swallowing the relic whole. The river poured in, furious and grateful. Kael fell to his knees, gasping, human again but pale. I ran to him. It's done, I said. He shook his head. No, you took his place. Before I could speak, pain lanced through my chest. The mark at my throat blazed white-hot. The bond screamed inside me. The river wasn't done taking. Wren! I fell, the world spinning in shades of red and gold. The last thing I saw was Kael's face, wild and broken, before everything turned to water. When I woke, it was dawn. The river was calm again, carrying only ash and sunlight. Kael sat beside me, shirt torn, hands covered in blood that wasn't his. His eyes were wet. You stopped breathing, he said quietly. You cried, I whispered. He almost smiled. Don't tell anyone. I sat up, expecting pain. There was none. The mark on my throat was gone. The bond, quiet but still there, had changed. What happened? You gave her your name, he said. The river, the moon. You gave them everything that made you belong to her. Now you belong only to yourself. I blinked. And you? He looked away. I still belong to the vow. No, I said, standing. You belong to the choice you made. Rowan limped toward us from the bridge ruins, smoke curling behind her. The order's gone. What's left of them is running. You two just rewrote half the city's myths. Congratulations. Kael rose, helping me to my feet. What now? Rowan looked up at the fading moon. Now we rebuild, and hope the next gods we anger have better manners. She walked away, muttering something about needing whiskey and a vacation. Kael turned to me. The morning light softened the edges of his scars. He looked human again. Too human. Do you regret it? He asked. I shook my head. No, the river remembers us now. And if the moon ever calls again. He smiled, faint but real. We'll make her wait. He pulled me close, forehead to forehead, breath mingling in the quiet that followed. Every war leaves ghosts, he murmured. But for the first time, I think ours can rest. The sun climbed higher, burning the last trace of red from the water. The world felt new, fragile, alive. Kael took my hand. Come with me, he said. Let's see what a world without masters looks like. I smiled. Lead the way, Alpha, he winced. Don't call me that, I laughed. Then what should I call you? He thought for a moment, eyes soft and certain. Mine, if you still want. I didn't answer with words. The wind carried our silence across the river, and somewhere beneath it, the water whispered, not in warning this time, but in blessing. The moon remembers. And so do we.